Welcome. Come on in. Um, I see a few people have joined the broadcast. Say hello. Let me know where you're watching from. Who's watching? Can't always see everyone's name, but thank you for joining. Thank you for being a part of the show one more time. I appreciate it. Just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Give me a wave. Give me a hey. So I know who's a part of the show and who's watching tonight. And I can make sure that I can see your comments as well. So make sure I don't have to adjust anything on my end with my privacy settings. So I'll give it a few more seconds. Allow people to come on in the room and join. Leave a comment. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me, if you can see me. Make sure. Okay. All right. Okay. I see. Okay. I see a couple of people who have joined. Kendra, Delaney, Damali. I'm sorry. I know I always mispronounce your name. Thank you for joining tonight. I appreciate it. Welcome to another episode of Ready for a Relationship Live. I'm your host, A.B. Bracewell, and I'm just glad to be on here again. I did take 2 weeks off. You know, it was the Super Bowl weekend and it was Valentine's Day weekend, so I'm sure you guys were busy and occupied and probably booed up or watching a lot of football. So I decided to take those 2 weeks off, but I'm back this week. And this week we are talking about forgiving and letting go. We're talking about forgiving and letting go. So please like, share, comment, leave your questions. Tell a friend that is on, because we're talking about a very important topic tonight about forgiveness and letting go in order to be ready for happy and healthy relationships. So how did this show and why do I do this show? How did it start? It started from a book that I came out with just a few months ago, Ready for a Relationship. And in the book, I speak about the importance of focusing on our internal readiness in order to be ready for a happy and healthy relationship. And in the book, I speak about different topics: healing from past hurt, getting to know ourselves, developing a mutuality mindset, developing our relationship with God in order to be prepared and ready when that person comes into to our lives. And one of the topics that I wrote about in the book is about forgiving and letting go in order to find healing and to be prepared for that special someone when they join your life. So as always, I'm going to read a brief excerpt from the book just to prepare you for the conversation and prepare you for the discussion. Please remember, share, like, leave a comment, put up a question, and let's just enjoy this talk and learn from each other. Forgive and let go. Learning to forgive and let go might be the most important thing that we have to do in order to move past our hurt and pain. We can break up with them, we can divorce them, we can try to replace them, but none of that matters if we do not learn to forgive and let go of them. Without forgiveness, we will never truly be ready for a healthy relationship because we will never truly be a healthy individual. I once heard it said that holding on to unforgiveness is like drinking poison and hoping that it kills the other person. The statement illustrates how the toxic effects of holding on to grudges destroys us from the inside and eventually makes its way to the outside of us. It may seem like we're punishing one person that hurt us by being mean towards them, by hating them, or talking about them to other people. But the reality is that it breeds fear, anger, and resentment. And it all is brewing inside of us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we really are only hurting ourselves when we do not learn to forgive and let go. So tonight, I have some very special guests as always. Tonight, I have some even more special guests. Some very wise and enlightened and professional individuals. Let me just tell you a little bit about both of them. My first guest, or they're coming on together, but the first guest I will introduce to you is Miss Tracy Reddy. Tracy is a marriage and family therapist. She's a certified wellness expert. She's a dating coach, and she's a relationship mentor. I had the pleasure to be on Tracy's broadcast a couple of weeks ago, and I tell you, she's doing some great things with women, just helping them heal, helping them to build themselves up, build up the self-esteem, and coaching them on the proper way of dating. My other guest is Isaac Bethay. He's one of my colleagues, very professional brother. He is also a marriage and family therapist. He's been working with families and children and couples for years. So he has years of experience and skill under his belt with helping people to learn how to forgive and learn how to move on past hurt and pain. So please give both my guests a warm welcome as I add them to the stream. Miss Tracy Reddy and Mr. Isaac Bethay. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I do. Yes. Hey, Adam, thanks for having me aboard.
Yes, thank you for having me.
No, thanks for being a part of it, part of it. I'm excited about this conversation tonight because, you know, there's a lot of people that I'm come in contact with, either over social media or everyday life, that are holding on to grudges, holding on to pain, holding on to hurt, and haven't really learned how to forgive and let go of some of the things that has hurt them in the past. So we're going to talk about all of that tonight. Before we even get into that, please introduce yourselves. If I may not do your introduction any justice, so please tell people about yourself.
You want me to go first?
Ladies first.
Okay. Okay. Well, yes, you did a wonderful job. I am Tracy Reddy. I am trained in marriage and family therapy. And in doing that work for a little while, I decided to shift my focus to a more proactive role and reaching out to help single women prepare for healthy relationships and prepare for dating, actually. Because I truly believe if you can date better, you can likely marry better. And so, and shout out to all my friends and fam that are in the audience. I appreciate y'all for showing up. And so, yeah, you described it perfectly. That is exactly what I do.
Great. Isaac?
I think I agree with Tracy that Adam, you did a great job in introducing me. I am a marriage and family therapist that works with individuals, both children and adults, as well as couples. And I think that a significant part of being ready for any relationship is being aware of who we are as individuals and acknowledging our emotional statuses, whether it's coming from a positive or a negative place.
Okay, I totally agree. And once again, I thank both of you guys for being on the show tonight. So let's just jump right into the conversation because I know you guys have a lot to share. And once again, to those that are watching, please share and like and comment and leave your questions because I have some questions prepared, but we much rather answer your questions that come directly from the viewers. But my first question for both of you guys is why do you think it's such a hard thing for people to let go of the hurt, to forgive and move past it? Why is it such a barrier for so many people?
Well, I'll jump in. Well, I truly believe that the reason it is such a tough thing, not only is it just hard, like emotionally, just sometimes we don't even know what to do to work through the process of forgiveness. But when you stop and think about what our core human needs are as individuals, things like competence and significance and attachment, when you form bonds with people and you create this relationship over time and then it's violated, it's not an easy thing to step back from all those benefits that you got from that relationship. And so a lot of times when you try to face the idea of going on without them, it's a hard thing to do, especially if they're still alive. If they're still here, they're still available to you in essence. And so I believe that's one of the reasons people struggle, because they are attached on so many levels to this person, and it can be overwhelming to try to figure out how to work through, any one piece of it.
Yeah, I agree. That attachment part is so important to just building relationships, and when you grow attached to someone and you get attached to that pain, it's hard to let go and forgive someone that hurt you. So yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. Isaac, what about you? Why do you think it's so hard for people to let go of the hurt and the pain?
I think a large part of it is that we as humans struggle to feel out of control or powerless. And when people violate us, it reminds us of how powerless we are in that particular situation, that particular setting, as well as it leads us to think of there may be future occurrences where we are out of control or powerless. And so I think that fear of powerlessness or not being in control, or that someone else can do something against our will, really inhibits us.
Yeah, I agree. That loss of control, that's a serious thing. I work with a lot of people when I'm counseling, coaching, therapy, whatever you want to call it, where we often hear that people find purpose in their pain. But I've worked with a lot of people and it seems like their pain has really become their purpose. Like they found the identity in that pain. So they don't even, it's not that they don't want to let go, or I should say, it's not only that they don't know how to let go of that hurt, but they seem like they don't want to let go of that hurt. Like it dominates their thoughts, it dominates their everyday actions. Everyone they meet, they want to tell their story of hurt and pain, and they just want to hold on to that trauma or that sadness or that anger, and just, I guess it becomes comfortable to be in that victim role. And that's what I try to get people out of that when I'm working with them. But it's really a hard thing for them to let go and learn how to forgive. And I see that it doesn't only affect us when it comes to relationships. It affects us in all areas of our lives. So can y'all talk about that? Someone that's holding on to grudges and pain and hurt, and how, and even if it originated in a relationship, how does that affect people in other areas of their lives? Anybody can jump in.
So I personally believe that it affects us in all areas of our lives, not just our relationships. In our relationships, I think that holding on to pain adds emotional stress. It leads to worry. I think that it often will lead to bitterness if we do not address it soon enough. And those feelings impair or impede or create a barrier to intimacy, which is a close relationship with another person. It doesn't have to necessarily be a romantic relationship, but even friendships. It causes us to keep secrets, or just not share things that may not even be something that we're trying to hide. It's just we would rather, out of fear, keep our thoughts to ourselves. And so in that way, it impedes relationships. I think that it impairs our spiritual life because it adds guilt and shame, which then leads us to avoid God some, or not feel that he is helping us. And so then we feel that, maybe he doesn't care about us. So in that way, it impairs our spiritual life. I think it will at times lead us to make impulsive decisions, which can significantly impair us financially, be it through the loss of a job if we cuss out a customer or a supervisor, or it could be where we're unable to maintain a strong work ethic. So we struggle to go to work on a daily basis because we're too angry at people or avoiding people. So those are some of the few, but I definitely believe that it impairs us in all areas of our lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I actually, I was just gonna say, I have a close friend that deals with that. Or I should even say suffers with that, like holding on to jobs, because he carries this anger from like one job to the next, and his biggest thing is that he doesn't like the way his superiors address him or talk to him, and this is stemming back from when his original job, when he got fired from, and he never let go of that anger. So he goes into the job with his guard up. And then as soon as they give him some type of directive he doesn't like, they give him some type of order he doesn't like, he's either quitting or he's getting an argument. And then before you know it, he's looking for another job. So is what you said about the job life employment is so true. It's so true. Tracy, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think he gave a lot of great examples of how it shows up. And I just have a little, I guess you could say, saying that people can use when they're thinking in terms of this. Forgiveness anywhere is unforgiveness everywhere. Unforgiveness anywhere is unforgiveness everywhere. And really anything, if it's fear that you have in your heart, if it's any type of emotion that you have, can be triggered and pop up anywhere else in your life. And so while you're thinking you have it, contained over here in dating and relationships, or you have it contained over here in your work environment, no, it will spill over into any given person who brings up that thing in your heart and it's unresolved. It can be, touched again.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people don't realize that.
Right.
They think if they're angry at a level, or they feel like they was hurt by an ex-lover, they feel like it's isolated to that situation. But they don't realize like that root of bitterness spreads everywhere. It becomes a part of your personality. It becomes a part of your character. The way you interact with everyone. Because if you holding that type of anger and resentment in your heart towards someone, it's not going to, especially if the person is no longer around you, you're going to have to find someone else to project that on. And that's what usually happens. You project that anger or that hurt on other people. So let's talk about the generational cycles of unforgiveness and how that behavior or that pattern of behavior is passed down, and how it shows up in relationships. A lot of people come from families where they practice unforgiveness, or people hold grudges against each other, and it affects them very deeply. What are your thoughts on that? On like how it can actually be a generational curse in some families?
And just sometimes a generational pattern, because I think when we think curses, sometimes we get super spiritual, but it could just be a pattern of how you've learned how to handle conflict, which is don't. And people pick that up and carry it along. One of the things that I try to help my clients work through when it comes to unforgiveness is recognizing that one of the things we need from our parents, we need it modeled for us, and we need it done in the actual parent-child relationship, is knowing how to restore the relationship after conflict. And I know in the house I grew up in, it was like, I don't care about how you feel, just go do what I said. You know, and so it took some outside influence for me to learn how to acknowledge conflict and then handle the conflict and then say, oh, and we're okay now that it's over, you know, or it's okay if we have to part ways. And I think in a lot of instances, we you know, parents don't model that because they were never taught it, and then we grow up to be children who have never had it done for us, or a parent that grows in bitterness towards us because we were, you know, a little bit more frisky or whatever than the other kids. And so we feel like if I do bad, there is no restoration. And so, yes, parents definitely show you how to or not to restore or release relationships when they go awry after conflict.
Mhm.
I agree with what Tracy said, that a lot of things we get from our parents or our families of origin without even realizing them. In my family of origin, we believed in loyalty to the group. And so, regardless of any violation, any um, conflict, we kind of just said, we're going to continue to be family. And so the conflicts were never addressed. They were hardly recognized or acknowledged. And so I think we then went on with the mindset that if there's conflict, then it's liable to be either a problem, or which should be avoided at all costs, which then says when you get into a relationship, let's say dating, and there's conflict, you say, oh, this must not be the right one because we're not in agreement, which we all know that every relationship has conflict repeatedly. It may not be every day, but you're not going to go a month without some disagreement. It may not be an argument, but at least a disagreement. And the other thing is, I think it led us to not really know how to address the conflict. So I think we were unnoticeably bitter, if that makes any sense, because there was no direct expression of anger. Everything was internalized without any external expression. So to anyone outside of us, they felt we were perfect and didn't have any emotional distress.
Mhm.
I didn't say created a barrier to intimate relationships. And I don't mean just romantic ones, but just close friendships at times.
Yeah.
But
I definitely agree. Go ahead.
the other thing that I think happens is that we can learn from our parents or a parent that the other gender is untrustworthy or sneaky, deceitful. And so then we go through life fearing relationships, marriage, dating, while also desiring those relationships. And so we can either, I've seen people that are the term, I've even heard some of them use it, serial monogamous. And so they just bounce from one committed relationship to another quickly at times. And then they are unable to understand why they're unable to maintain these relationships. And it's generally because they go in believing that it's going to fail. And so they look for faults in the other person rather than strengths. And all of us have both. So if you're preoccupied with the faults, you'll view them as more significant than the strengths.
Yeah, I definitely agree, man. That's some good points that both of you guys made. We have Kelly here. She says it's passed down by being taught through observed actions, family culture, and actually being told things like not letting people get over on you. Yeah, that's very true. I heard that a few times. Like I try to be very intentional as I raise my son to set an example, not to hold grudges, even when I'm angry with him. If he does something wrong, if I get a bad report in school, or he does something that I feel he knows better, and I have to discipline him. I always have to catch myself and say, okay, now I have to go back and mend what happened. I don't want him to think that I'm going to be angry at him for the rest of the day or the rest of the week because he made a mistake on something. So, I have to go give him a hug, or, hey, let's go play basketball together, or do something, because, I grew up in a family where people held grudges for a long time, and it took a while for us to mend the relationship after someone was hurt, and in that time that we waited, a lot of damage was caused. So I try my best to be intentional with, hey, I was angry about this. This is what I want you to do, but I'm not going to hold this anger against you forever. And I think go ahead, Chris.
No, I just said, there's no loss of relationship. Like I can be angry and still not lose the relationship. He brought up a great point, Isaac did, about in families, the loyalty that is taught, and we us, we're gonna be in here with us and all of that. And I think sometimes, even from another angle of how generational cycles of unforgiveness is passed down, is through this false sense of keeping the peace. And how we've all just learned, a lot of us have learned, I won't say nothing because I don't want to disrupt. So even if you're hurting, if anything has happened, I ain't gonna say nothing because I don't want to stir things up. I just want to keep the peace, and it's not peaceful at all because it's tearing you up on the inside. And then again, you grow up and you start having relationships, and all the stuff that you held in is gonna come out, like you said earlier, on somebody, on somebody somewhere. So just that aspect of faking. There's a book called The Peacemaker, and he gives this graph where it's there's peace, real true peace, and then on the far end there is peace faking without saying anything, and there's peace breaking where you're just angry and constantly fighting, and neither one is real peace. Even though you say that's what you're trying to fight for or be quiet about, it's not real peace.
Yeah. I think what you're saying speaks right to Mel's comment. He said good conflict resolution skills are a must in a partner. Like just being quiet and burying your feelings or your anger is not conflict resolution. And it will come out, or it will burn you up inside. So you definitely have to learn how to face those issues and talk about it and communicate in order to resolve some of those conflicts. So let's get a little deeper. I kind of kept it real general, just about unforgiveness in general. But let's get to the meat of what the discussion is when it comes to learning how to forgive and let go when it comes to relationships, in order to heal and be ready for a happy and healthy relationship. Like I said before, there's a lot of people that's holding on to grudges. There's a lot of people that are easily offended. I was listening to a sermon the other day, and the guy said that offense is the gateway to unforgiveness. We have, in these days of dating and relationships, we have red flags, we have deal breakers, we have all types of things that we measure against that can possibly offend us. And if we have so many things that can offend us, of course, then we end up holding on so many grudges. It affects us in dating, it affects us in a relationship. Like, what are some ways that people can prevent from being so offended these days? Because it seems like we have a laundry list of things that can offend us. What are some ways that people can prevent that?
I can just say I'm so tired of hearing the word triggered. And maybe I'm wrong for that, being in the field that I'm in. But this whole triggered culture is quite exhausting, because it's just giving people a license to never deal with the things that's triggering them. We can't have little booby traps in our soul that when somebody step on, and they may not even know, the expectation may not have even been communicated, but we're triggered. We're triggered, and so the world is not supposed to move around your triggers. You should handle those triggers by investing in time with a professional like ourselves, and dealing with it. Your trigger is your responsibility, not the rest of the world. And I think that's the first big lesson. And I know it's easier said than done because I have them too, but but it's not anybody else's responsibility. It's ours to deal with our triggers or our easily offenses.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with Tracy. I think that we often give away our power and control of our emotions to other people. And I think we are never or very rarely offended by whatever the incident is. It's always our interpretation of the incident. And so to stop being so offensive, I think we have to first recognize, identify our own core insecurities. And so, let's say you're offended because somebody stepped on your shoes or your toes. Well, it's not them stepping on your toes. Generally, that is why you're angry, but it's you feel disrespected. This person intentionally is trying to get over on me. And so a lot of people will feel like a doormat. I'm soft because I let them get away with disrespecting me. Someone else may feel insecure in their ability to replace said sneakers. Shucks, I pay X amount of dollars. I don't have that to get back. So now I'm going to look less than because I can't continue the same presentation of financial acumen and so I think we have to acknowledge our core insecurities rather than the supposed triggers as Tracy was talking about.
Yeah, and that's I agree with both of you guys, and what Tracy said is definitely a thought that I was having about triggers. We all talk about our triggers, but rarely do people take out the time to figure out where that trigger is coming from, why it triggers you. All we know is that what you did triggered me. I'm angry at you. Now I'm gonna cut you off. That's a deal breaker. But we don't take up the time to explore, like, where is that pain coming from? Like, who hurt you before this? And I think another point is that we take things so personal these days. 9 times out of 10, kind of what Isaac was saying with the interpretation. 9 times out of 10, like a person's behavior, a person's behavior is just a projection of their anger. It's probably not what you did directly. It's something that person was been holding inside themselves, and now they're projecting it on you. And I think if you have that mindset, it can stop you from being so offended about stuff. Like that's that person's issue. Like it is not a personal attack on my character or who I am as a person. That person needs healing from whatever they're angry about, whatever they're hurt about, and learning how to communicate can stop offenses. I believe, like, if you can ask to clear up your understanding on what happened or why someone did something, and that goes with the interpretation. Learning just how to communicate, ask the question, like, okay, you did this, it hurt me in this way, but can you clear up what your intentions were? But we usually, interpret the way we wanted to interpret, and we run with that. And before we're holding on to grudges and unforgiveness and all types of stuff towards someone else, where it could be just a misinterpretation.
Yeah, that's wonderful what you're saying. Like, when it happens, say something. But I think her name is Damali. She says we all need to know our triggers. If you can go into a relationship knowing what triggers you, you can be even proactive on that and say, hey, I'm dealing with a thing about when somebody does X, Y, and Z. because I'm all about the proactivity. So I'm dealing with XYZ. So just so you'll know, hey, you may say this, I might pop out. But my husband says something all the time about we have all these things we want people to do. We never really communicate our expectations. We never really say what we expect. And it's partly because we don't even know. We just know I'm triggered. And that's it. Conversations stop there. And we don't really dig into that. But the more we can know about our triggers and how they are triggered and work towards healing those, the more we can go into with expectations and communicate proactively before the offense even happens.
Yeah. That goes back to what I was saying early on, like knowing yourself.
Yes.
Like, it's so important to know yourself before you jump into relationships. You hear you spazzing out on your mate, and they don't even know what they did to get you mad. Like, hold up, they know that was a trigger. We never talked about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're a little bit over halfway at the halfway point of the broadcast, and this is the point I kind of get all in your business and get a little personal. So, we, as therapists, as coaches, we are good at giving advice to others, but I always think that transparency is like the best teacher or educator. So, what's your personal experience with learning how to forgive, let things go, holding on to grudges, and how did you overcome that if you had that experience?
So one that I can think of, and it's something I think about often because it was a situation with my father, which then more or less led to me having this same emotional experience with pretty much all supervisors moving forward. And when I was a kid, I felt like my father was a taskmaster. Like all he ever did was Isaac do this, Isaac do that. There was no real relationship other than me being his slave. That's how I kind of felt at times. So when I was 10, my parents bought another house, and they kept the one that we lived in initially, and they rented it out. At some point when I was an adolescent, I don't remember exactly how old, I made a public statement to someone in my family. I can't remember if it was my mom or my siblings. I don't really hate the guy, but kind of cool if he lived at the other house and we lived in this one. And I guess that was my, as I said earlier, bitterness without even really describing it as bitterness or anger. It's sort of like a avoidance. Whenever he came home, I would run and jump into bed. I learned that if he saw you sleep, he wouldn't have you do any chores. Anything else, he'd say, hey, stop that, come sweep the floor, wash the dishes. You say, but I'm doing my homework. Yeah, you can finish the homework afterwards. And so, as soon as I saw his car pour up, I would just run and pretend to be sleeping. And so, I then started feeling that supervisors in the future or in the present were going to have that same abrasive personality where they are looking for flaws rather than trying to support me. And, if I needed support, then I often wasn't going to them, go to someone else, coworker, rather than the supervisor. And at some point I had to realize, some of this is my own insecurity at feeling I'm doing good enough at the task rather than this other person's projection or their perception of whether I'm doing it right or wrong. And I had to own it myself. I can make a determination whether I'm doing a great job or a poor job, regardless of what the other person is saying or doing. I could be getting an A and know that I'm doing poorly. And I could be getting a C and know that, hey, this is the best I can do. It's not based on someone else's criteria, but my own. And so then I can then own it and, not be fearful that when this person comes, they're going to say, hey, this didn't get done right, or you should have done better. And so then after a while, I was able to accept my dad for who he was, recognize, he's never going to be the most nurturing, affectionate individual. It's just not who he is. And I can't, demand him to be that way. And so now, I enjoy spending time with him, and I'm able to comfortably say no if he wants to go do something that I'm not interested in without feeling guilty.
That's good. Good stuff. Good stuff, man. Yeah.
I have so many, so many things. My struggle really hasn't been necessarily holding a grudge, just not knowing how to communicate maybe that I do not, or I don't, I don't like this. And so one of the ways that like I said, there's so many I could think of, but one where that was very significant. I'll give you two. One where the relationship was restored or made healthy, and one where the relationship was let go. So one where the relationship was restored was with my father. Now listen, unlike Isaac, I always felt I had a great relationship with my dad. Now I was raised by my grandmother and not my mother and father for various reasons. But one of the things that happened is my mother went out of town to go pursue her career, so I stayed with her mother. And then my dad, who was still in the city, he went on to get married, have other kids, and I would go over there every other weekend and all that. But I always felt like an outsider, and I always felt like, okay, you're here. You apparently like kids. This is my little young mind trying to figure it all out. You apparently like kids, so why am I not over there with you? Why am I growing up with grandma when y'all got a beautiful home that I could just come over there and be a regular kid, with a mama and a daddy, stepmom and a daddy. And that all came to, I didn't realize this was even an issue until a relationship happened and I, broke up. We ended up breaking up, and I couldn't understand why I was unable to fully process, what had happened in that relationship. Because I'm like, okay, it sucked that we broke up, but I should be able to get over the, push past this, a little quicker than this. And I was not able to. And it was in sitting down with a fellow counselor and working through some things and figuring out that it was directly related to my dad. And so something I'd never done before in my child or adult life, was ask my dad, could we meet and have a serious discussion? And brought him to the table and was like, listen, I explained to him how I had broken up with the guy and I couldn't get over it. And I'm really feeling like it's you that I'm actually upset with. It's your rejection that I'm actually dealing with, not my ex's. And I explained to him, and I had, before we met, I had wrote down all the questions that I had. And then line by line, I'm going through the questions, crying, just very uncomfortable conversation. And my daddy was able to put a lot of things to rest. A lot of things that, like somebody said earlier, perception is reality. My little 10, 11, however old it was that all this all went down, was just really ruling the show here, and didn't have a clear understanding. Like, for example, one of the things I'm like, why didn't you just take me to your house? And he said, well, in that age and time, it was customary for especially girls to stay with their mom. And when your mom would, went out of town, I figured it was best for you to be with your grandmother rather than, with me, And so he was able to just give me answers to questions that just had been in my head unknowingly, kind of driving my dating and driving my other relationships. All I was trying to do was avoid getting rejected all the time, And so when he did that, a whole weight lifted, and it changed literally every relationship I had. So that's one example of relationship get restored. On the flip side, I had a best friend. We grew up freaking frack. You saw one of us, you saw both of us. Everybody, we was always together. She came and went to the school that I went to, the college that I went to. I graduated a year before her. And we had a lot of ups and downs in our relationship, but I just figured it was just regular ups and downs in relationships, you know. And it finally came to a head when after we both had graduated, we're back home, we're living our lives and getting jobs and stuff. And she had made a comment. She would always call me because I've always been given to this idea of giving relationship advice and stuff like that. So she had gotten married and she would call me and vent about whatever. And then if I try to flip around and say, hey, and this is what's going on with me, best friend, she would be like, oh girl, let me call you back. Let me talk to you later. And so all of that kind of, I made one little comment, it changed our whole relationship forever. I said, oh, okay, no problem. I'm used to it. Go ahead. And she was like, what you mean you're used to it? And it just blew everything up to the point where I had to break off the relationship because I came to realize I was putting the pressure on her to be the type of friend that I knew she wasn't. And when I released her from trying to fit into the box that I wanted her to be in and just let her be herself, and then I stopped putting her on this pedestal and making her all these, you know, all this great stuff and stopping plans with other friends to hang out with her. When I stopped all of that, she left herself. You know, it just I said we could be friends, but I'm no longer going to put you on that pedestal. And you know, she ended up leaving. So an example of restoring a relationship is sometimes hard in conversations in relationships, but in either case, I did the work to try to have peace in those places as opposed to just abandoning either one with perceptions that were not true.
I think that's yeah, sure, definitely. Go ahead.
So I think that our fear of abandonment, losing relationships, often significantly impairs our relationships.
Yes, I agree.
Because as Tracy was saying, you know, we often put people on these pedestals and treat them in manners that are internally disrespectful to ourselves.
Mm. I'm very expressive. I'm trying to hold my facial expressions back, but I'm like, that was good. That was good.
Yeah, no, I mean, hey, and I'm so glad that you was able to have those conversations. And like you said, you did the work. Both of you guys, yeah, was able to have those conversations with your parents or with your friends. Just as I thought about a story, I never used to really think that I was a person that held grudges or unforgiveness until someone did something that truly offended me. Because usually things can roll off my back and I don't give it too much of attention. But this thing truly hurt my feelings when it was done. And this is somebody that was very close to me. And I didn't speak to this person for like almost a year or maybe over a year because of what they did and what they said. And the only thing that probably made me extend that olive branch and try to talk and mend that relationship is when someone, I shouldn't say someone, when my mom passed away. When my mom passed away, I realized how temporary life is, how quickly someone can be gone, and how senseless it is to hold this anger and these grudges against people that you actually love. And I had no idea I could be mad at this person for another year and something happened and I probably would never had known because I cut them off and stopped talking to them. So sometimes like that fear of losing a relationship can also repair a relationship, because that became my fear. Like, what if I hold this grudge against this person for so long and something happens and I never know? Like, I'll feel bad. So that led me to try to have the conversation and rebuild that relationship. But yeah, I've had my experience too. So what advice would you give someone that's holding on to unforgiveness, holding on to grudges? What advice, what steps can they take to let some of that stuff go and not only become healthy for a relationship, but be healthy for themselves?
Well, confront it. Like I said, I have tons of stories of having to address lingering relationships had lingered in ways that I came to discover were unhealthy. And one of which was a relationship with an aunt who was more like a sister to me. So, because we were just like 10 years apart, she was my grandmother, or is my grandmother's youngest child. And she had a lot of anger. Let's put it like that. She had a lot of anger and a lot of demanding ways. And one day, that continued on into my adulthood, and what I had to do was, even though I was definitely afraid of her, I had to stop in my tracks and say, no, I will not accept this anymore. It was more like, no, I will not accept this anymore. And it started a dialogue to where she didn't even realize, like, what you talking about? I'm like, it's so obvious to me, and you have no idea. And so sometimes we just have to stop and turn around instead of running from that thing, and just turn around and face it and just go and deal with it right head on. If there's a parent, if there's a sibling, a friendship, acknowledge that you have an issue, and go from there and see what happens.
Mm.
So I agree with Tracy that the importance of it is acknowledging and identifying. And I think we have to try to identify what are our real emotions connected to this. Am I afraid of this person? If so, why? Is it really that this person is doing something to me, or is it just I'm afraid of that type of behavior that they commonly do? And if we can identify our real emotions, beyond the anger, the insecurity, the fear, the pain, then we can generally figure out, or we can begin to figure out how to change our interaction with that person, or our interaction with that event or setting.
Mhm. Yeah. Like Dr. Constance says, that's good advice from both of you guys. Great advice. And I hope they're taking notes and writing down some of those steps that they can take to let go of that unforgiveness.
And you know
So
what, Adele? I was thinking as well, even just because you do confront it, just to kind of set our expectations, just because you confront it don't mean you're gonna get the outcome that you want. Sometimes the confrontation is for you to have that release and just get it out there that, okay, this ain't right. I don't know what's gonna happen after this, but it ain't right, and I'm not. This is not how I want to operate with you. So sometimes it's just setting a healthy boundary, as opposed to saying, "Oh, I'm gonna say this," and then my friend or my cousin or my whomever is going to respond in the way that you expect. Not necessarily. So your first step is, like I said, acknowledging it and confronting it, but don't have your expectation that, oh, this everything's just gonna be fine now. Not necessarily, because they may not be in the place where you are in their growth process. They're not on there listening right now necessarily. So, set your expectations appropriately.
yeah, that's kind of what I said in the beginning. Like when I heard someone say that holding on to unforgiveness is like drinking poison, hoping that someone else is going to die. And what you just said is like you were doing it for ourselves, really, because you may not get the answer that you want. So letting go of that unforgiveness, I mean, yeah, and that anger and those grudges is for yourself, your own internal healing, so you can live more free and live a better life. Isaac, you want to say something?
Yeah, that whole topic reminded me of something I heard somewhere. I don't even remember who, but I want to say it was like a counselor or something. And they said, our conscience balances the scale, which meant that if we are not acting in accordance to how we internally feel we should, then our conscience is going to somehow bring some negative weight on us. It's going to lead to us feeling guilty or ashamed. So if we need to confront someone, as Tracy said, we may lose that relationship if they're not ready. But as long as we maintain that relationship, our conscience is going to create some internal distress.
That's a deep one. Our conscious balance the scale.
Yeah, I'm
Remember
gonna
that.
have
I gotta
to
write
get
that
that.
down.
Yeah, I'm like, I gotta get that right. Let me write that down because that is a really
Mhm.
good one. Our conscience will not let us just stew in it. And if we learn how
Mhm.
to suppress it, we're getting even unhealthier and unhealthy. Isaac, that was great. Thank you for sharing it.
Like I said,
See,
I didn't come up with it. I heard somebody say,
thanks for the share though. We appreciate it. We're gonna use it too. Dr. Constance Cooper says when you hold to unforgiveness, you're holding yourself and that just in that situation in your heart, as opposed to letting it go, releasing that situation, that person back to God, that person back to God. And that takes me right into our final question. Since I know both you guys are believers, both of you guys are, or you're a man of God and a woman of God. I want to know, how does your spiritual beliefs impact your ability to forgive and let things go? And a lot of our listeners and our watchers, they're believers too. So this is not only for you, but you'll be speaking to them. So that's the question. How does your spiritual belief, or how should it affect the way we forgive and let things go?
I was trying to let Isaac go first. Well, you know, we're forgiven. And when we're able to truly understand what Christ doing for us meant and what it really looks like and how we are no longer at odds with God because we show up behind the veil and behind the blood of Jesus, when we really understand that, we can at least find a reference point to be able to spew that onto other people, and to give that to other folks. It Ironically, okay, so my program, I do more programmatic stuff than I do just plain old one-on-one coaching counseling. And so the ladies who I take through my program, there are those who are believers and there are those who are not. And we do a whole thing on forgiveness. And I find that those who are not believers struggle the most in confronting things and forgiving people and, walking their path. Whereas the believers, may struggle and may be a fight, but they eventually kind of get it. And I'm just learning from that eternal forgiveness really reverberates into how we're able to forgive. And that's not that we're going to get it right every time. I have somebody right now in my life who I'm working through the process of, okay, where I'm working to forgive them, but I'm working through it. I haven't parked there and stayed there and planted my flag. Like, no, I have a right to be upset with this. I have a right, and I think I know for a fact part of that is because I know what God and Jesus, that how that whole forgiveness thing plays out there, and I can put it in other relationships.
Yeah, no, good. That's good. That's good.
so my sister in this month told me a quote that I found really powerful. And it said, I had to forgive a person that wasn't even sorry. That strength. And so when I look at it that way, I believe that God directs, if not commands, us to forgive others. And so if I'm trying to follow his will, his word, then it's my need to forgive others. And I think caught up or confused with forgiveness at times. And I think that can at times make it more difficult. We often think that forgiveness is reconciliation, which means that it's a mended relationship. So it's, well, if they didn't seek the forgiveness, then I can't forgive them. We often confuse forgiveness and think that it's allowing the person to get away with it or okay that behavior, which then says, well, if they violated me and I forgive them, then they're going to violate me again because it appears as if I accept it. And so I realized that, we have to really recognize that forgiveness is just a mindset of not holding a grudge, not allowing that violation to cause us desire or cause us to want to seek revenge or to not have a positive relationship with the person. And I think that tripped me up a lot as a kid is, in my mind, it's like, okay, well, if I'm not trying to fight them, I'm not seeking revenge, then I forgave them. And that's what I was saying is, as in my family of origin, it's like, well, if we're not arguing, then it's forgiven, no problem, without recognizing that I never addressed this hurt me. I felt embarrassed. I was ashamed, and identifying those emotions and then saying, I'm not going to blame that person, or I'm not going to be mad at them, hold it against them for what they did, violated me.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Isaac, you put a lot of quotes that I was writing down. I saw Tracy grab her pen once or twice. So good stuff from both of you guys. Yeah.
I wrote some things down too.
Yeah. Like you were saying, like that's the foundation of our faith. Forgiveness. That's what it was all about. That's why Christ came down to forgive us for our sins. And like Tracy says, like that's something I can always reference when I'm feeling angry or holding a grudge against somebody for something I feel like they did. I can always remind myself, like, listen, all the stuff that I did or have done, and I'm forgiven. Now I'll be a hypocrite not to forgive this person for the little things that they've done. So I think that's healing in itself. That's healing in itself.
You know what? To kind of just say it directly, people, listen. Forgiveness and reconciliation are two different processes. They are not. They are two different journeys. Forgiveness is about you releasing them. Reconciliation is about the two of you coming to the table and negotiating what interaction will look like. So don't, if you're struggling to feel like Isaac was saying that, oh, if I forgive them, then we got to be buddies again. No, it's two different processes. One requires them and one does not.
Exactly. So if anybody is on this broadcast and watching and want to connect with you guys, both of you guys are therapists, both of you guys are counselors or coaches. How can they connect with you? How can they reach out to you to find? Because like I said, there's a lot of people are holding on to some hurt and some pain and unforgiveness, and they need someone that can guide them through that journey of forgiveness. So Tracy, how can people find you?
Well, they can reach me at tracyready.com, TracyReady.com. And they can schedule a consultation. It's free to do so. And I also have a small course that they can complete to try to start that journey of just soul care in general. And they can also reach me on Facebook at Soul Care for Single Black Women. And there I'm doing a lot of stuff. That's where my Friday live broadcast is. And you can reach me on either of those two platforms, the easiest.
Okay. TracyReady.com. Isaac?
So I need to step my game up and get to where Tracy is. I'm not easily accessible. So, I don't have the .coms and all that other good stuff in social media. The best way is, unfortunately, at a long email address, which is Isaac Bethea Therapist at gmail.com. So it's ISABETHEATHERAPIST at gmail.com. hopefully at some point, hopefully sooner rather than later, I have all of these podcasts and social media be able to keep up where you two are.
I was trying to. I
That's,
think I spelled it right.
yeah, I appreciate it.
All right, so reach out to Isaac, reach out to Tracy if you have any questions, you want to connect with them. Listen, I want to thank you guys for this deep and enlightening conversation, but it's a deep topic. It's not an easy topic. It's not a rainbows and cotton candy topic. People holding on to a lot of pain that they need to let go. So it's a serious talk. And so I hope that as people watch and people listen, if they watch the replay, they can comment, they can reach out, and they can give your opinions or ask questions, and we can always go back to the replay and respond. Once again, I want to thank everybody that was watching. I want to thank my guests, Tracy and Isaac. I appreciate you for coming on. This is Ready for a Relationship. You can reach me at my website at readyforrelationship.com. As I said, this whole broadcast is originated from the book that I created, that I wrote, readyforrelationship.com, where Ready for a Relationship, and you can go to the website and you can find a book, and you can find my first book, From Relational Hurt to Spiritual Healing. So that's it for tonight. So all I have left to say is, good night and God bless. And I hope you guys heal, find forgiveness, and learn how to let some of these things go so that you can be in a happy and healthy relationship. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Adam.
You're welcome. Thanks for being a part.